Hello, hello. Welcome back to Flow Habit Podcast, and I'm your host, Dmitry Senekov. Today's episode number 8 on the topic of how to let go of your guilt and breaking free from self-imposed expectations. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart as well, because guilt has been something that I have been quite guilty of throughout of my earlier adult life. And it's a very healthy form of an inner critic that continually controls, pushes, redirects us what it thinks to be the right or correct direction to go into. So today I want to explore all about guilt, where it's coming from, why is it there, what is its actual function, why there's benefit in it, and of course to help the mind understand that there isn't any more reason to control you, to beat yourself up for things that you have done, for things that are happening, for things that are not happening. Because when we do that, it doesn't actually change anything but make us feel less than. It doesn't actually help us become any better. So guilt, letting go of guilt. What is guilt? Where is it coming from? Right? So if you look at what the actual name is saying, guilt, what's underneath that is that I did something wrong, or I shouldn't have done that, or things should be happening in a different way, or the way my life is occurring or has happened was my responsibility, and therefore it is my fault that my life is happening this way, right? So I love expanding on the definition of words that we use, because it's not really just the word itself, it's the entire learning and energy behind it. Because, right, I can mention one word, tree, but if 1,000 of you just imagine a tree, we'll have 1,000 different trees. Somebody will imagine the tree in the backyard of the house you're growing up in. Somebody else will imagine a beautiful tree in the winter. Somebody else will imagine, an evergreen tree or a maple or all kinds of trees. So this is same thing with guilt, right? What does guilt actually mean? So what is the actual source of guilt? So as little babies, we grow up, we don't have mental cognition just yet. We don't understand what is happening. And at that point, when the baby is born, there is no guilt just yet. We don't understand what that means. We poop and it's poop. There's no guilt about it. We cry and we break stuff, and there's nothing to tell us that we're doing something wrong. Except that's when our social conditioning comes into play. In a way, our parents, our guardians, whoever is responsible to help us learn the ways of this world, that we begin to watch for what we do and how we do and how that impacts and affects other people. Right? At some point, it becomes wrong to go into our pants. And in the first little stages, that's okay if that continues, right? But after a certain age, it becomes wrong to go in the pants. And when it happens, there's a sense of wrongness about it. There's a sense of guilt that I did that. And there are many people who, even in their adult years, accidents happen out of their control, but because society has said this is what other people aren't doing, this is what we shouldn't be doing, this becomes a wrong, and so we feel guilty about it. Well, I want to give you permission today to begin create separation and distance between what society has told us the way we should be, what our parents, what our movies and all kinds of social media is telling us the way we should be, creating that separation that, well, there are other people who said this should be this way, but I'm different and I'm unique. And the interesting part is that each of us is actually unique in its own right. There isn't another version of ourselves. And when we're growing up, it's an interesting dynamic of, you can see when there's like boys and girls growing up in a private school, everybody has to wear the same uniform. They need to be, right, the uniform. Everybody needs to look the same, act the same. And that's when there's structure and control about what clothes you can wear. So people and children and teenagers begin to play with that, with their jewelry, right? Girls putting stuff in their ears. People begin to play with their hair. They begin to add various badges to their backpacks, right? So it's this push and pull of wanting to fit in, wanting to be like everybody else, while also standing up on our unique expression to be different, right? Because when we are like everybody else, then nobody stands out. And in a way, we all want to express our uniqueness in that way, right? So when we follow the other people's rules and expectations, that's when we become and start judging the way we show up. So the neighbor is parking their car a certain way, so I should be doing the same. Their grass is looking a certain way, so ours should be the same. And when that doesn't happen, there is this sense of being wrong in some way, not fitting into the rules or the conditioning. And so the guilt sets in that, yeah, I should be different. Likewise, right? So this is the pressure coming from the outside. And there's a sense of guilt when we do something that doesn't match other people's expectations. Similarly, at some point, we create our own rules for being in our life, right? I should be a high performer. I should be the smartest. I should be number one. I should be healthy. I should, a bunch of these shoulds, right? A bunch of these rules that we create this pressure now from within. So kind of there's the pressure from the outside and expectation of other people that we want to match so that we fit in. And then there's the internal pressure as well that is pushing us forward in a way. And the funny thing is that this internal pressure usually comes from the conditioned mind. So it is the same conditioning from the outside that has now set roots inside ourselves so that we show up in a way that we have been taught to be. Right now, we're actually getting benefits from it. It's not something that other people are telling us what to do, and it's like you're supposed to follow these rules. This pressure from the inside is that we have learned that when I follow these rules, it's actually benefiting me. Right. So when I get up early and go through my morning routine, it actually feels good to me. Or when I respond to my boss in after hours conversation, or I send emails at night, I get this external validation. It's like, oh my God, he or she is working so late. They're like the best. It feels good inside, right? So now we start getting this pressure from the inside because we have learned that these rules and conditions that were on the outside initially, we saw them as beneficial to us. They actually feel good inside. So now we have, in a way, been indoctrinated into having these rules, shoulds, expectations from the inside. And whenever we don't do according to our inner critic's expectations of ourselves, that's when also guilt sets in. Right? So kind of this is a multidimensional view of what guilt is. where it is coming from, and the cause of it. So let's go into next, maybe the benefit of that. Right. So if, especially the internal pressure, well, let's talk about the external pressure first. So other people want us to succeed. Other people want us to actually live a good life. Other people actually want good stuff for us, right? For example, when we were growing up and a little boy or girl is kind of feeling lethargic, they're a little lazy, they spent on the digital device too long, and now they're about to miss a school bus, right? We as parents, we actually want what's better for our kid, and we're gonna get them up. We're gonna make sure that they wake up. We're gonna kick them out of bed. Sometimes it may mean in somewhat of an aggressive way. It's like, okay, I actually want good stuff for you, so I'm gonna kick you out of bed. And we learn from the young age that if I am not inherently desiring to do something that is expected of me, and that doesn't actually fit the expectation, right? So for example, I don't want to get up in the morning, but I have to go to school. So I don't feel like it, but I have to. Now we have this also external pressure that, well, everybody goes to school in the mornings and everybody wakes up. So we actually learn that other people are telling me actually the good stuff that may actually benefit me. And my internal feeling of not wanting to get up is actually bad and wrong for me. Right. So now we are starting to create this relationship that other people, other rules and conditions and expectations are actually good for me, and they're better for me than my own inner sensations and feelings. So now we're creating the distance between trusting what's actually inside. What do I feel like doing? We see that sometimes we're lazy and we don't like that, and that other people are actually, they mean good for us. So we continually now put more and more power and even this positive relationship that other people actually mean good for me, and so I should listen to them. Right. So this is now, we have just given all the power to the outside, as in, whereas as kids, like, I'm going to do what I feel like, right? I'm going to get up and run, or I'm going to fall down and fall asleep. And it's like, I'm doing what I feel like doing. And there's no logical filter about it. So we just do as we please. As we grow up, we learn that how we feel is actually not good. And that instead we are supposed to develop this sense of discipline and commitment and all of these other things that we should be doing, and pushing ourselves, because inherently, like, if we don't push ourselves, then we're going to end up lazy pieces of meat and resting in bed and not actually being functional human beings. So, right, we just gave all the power to the outside. And then it's an interesting way how our mind works, because I actually don't want to give up my control. I don't want to be controlled by somebody else. Like, I want to keep my autonomy. I want to keep the control and power. The mind does this sneaky 360 or 180-degree turn that, okay, fine, since you want me to do that, and I don't want to feel powerless that you want me to do that, our mind does this out of survival shifting, that now what becomes what you want me to do, and I have no control over that. Now I actually internalize that drive, that expectation, that control, so that my inner critic begins to, in a way, drive me with that, stick of carrot with the stick, so that I end up being in control of what I do or don't do, and that you or the external has nothing to do with it. Right? This is why the inner critic grows so big, was because initially we gave away the power of how we feel to the outside, that how we feel doesn't matter. If we follow the guidance of our feelings, then nothing's going to happen. I'm going to be a lazy piece of meat. So I need to rely on outside. But I don't want to be controlled by the outside. So instead, I'm going to take, again, now the power back from the outside, from the expectations and control. And I'm going to create this, in a way, a separate being, inner critic inside, right? We call that, everybody, most people I speak with, they can relate this inner critic. We even have names for them sometimes. That now I am in control of my destiny again, right? It's not somebody else telling me what to do, but it is me. I'm going to drive myself forward. And so now we create this big need, not even to follow other people's expectations, but now I have developed such huge expectations for myself that I need to follow them. And so what happens there is that whenever we don't meet the expectation of this inner critic, we set in motion this feeling of guilt, that I should be different, that I shouldn't be behaving the way I'm behaving. So hopefully in this conversation so far, you're seeing how the inner critic has developed, how we take on the conditioning of the outer world, external world, right? We are taught from the beginning in the Western culture that money, success, consumerism, big house, big car, careers, money, all of that becomes significant in our life, something that we should have. There's a different relationship with all of that in the East, of course. And we take that on as our own rules and expectations now inside. And whenever we watch ourselves do stuff that is not matching those expectations, this feeling of guilt sets in. And in a way, as you may continue hearing me say, is that our emotions is actually our emotional guidance system. And it continuously tries to set us back on track of who we really are, back in a way the track of love and light and acceptance and feeling good about ourselves. So whenever we feel like we messed up, this feeling of guilt goes and shows us that we are off the direction a little bit. We're off the chart of loving ourselves. So let's give you a little sign of guilt so that you start coming back to track, right? So hopefully it's making sense where it's coming from, why the guilt is there, where the expectations are from, where the conditioning comes from, right? So next, let's start talking about what do we do with all of this and how do we actually kind of let go of this guilt? So the first thing with anything is to understand where it's coming from, right? It's like if we feel guilty or if we do something that we were expecting to be a different way, we feel the sense of guilt. And then what happens on top is we have now a sense of guilt of feeling the guilt. So the work and effort here, and the first part of this episode discussion is to help you make sense that feeling guilty is actually a proper natural response to a learned conditioning. It is simply to help us hear that message and start to redirect ourselves back to self-love and acceptance. And this is the way we do it, right? So first, there's nothing wrong with feeling guilty. When we are in important meetings, when we are having conversations in relationships or in business, or trying to be in conversations with prospects on the call, or various other things that activities that we're supposed to do during the day, when you come up against something that you feel like you did wrong and you get a sense of guilt, first thing is to say, okay, to notice, interesting, I feel guilty right now, right? That way, we are not actually trying to push away the sense of guilt, but instead, we go right into it, we go deeper into it. And this is my intention with anything that we do and any topic we have a conversation about. It's not about removing something out of the way, because everything that is happening in our life is actually there for our highest purpose, for us to see something in it. So just the fact that you're feeling guilty is not wrong. And there's no, you may feel guilty about feeling guilty, and you may feel guilty about guilty and guilty. And so it's just about removing this layering of all kinds of emotions, simply to say that it's like, there is a perfect reason why you're feeling that way. There's a perfect reason why your inner critic is so healthy, as in so good at directing you or controlling you. So this is the number one thing, to start to notice when it happens, that it's okay that it happens. There's a reason for it. And it is happening because of the past conditioning and past programming. And just having this conversation is what is beginning to reprogram the way you see yourself, both with your expectations and with your emotional guidance system of feeling guilty. Okay. So next, whenever I am in conversation and I find myself blurting something out that people don't receive well, that my inner critic says, oh, you shouldn't have said that, or why did I say that, right? And this sense of guilt comes in. One first thing is to notice it and accept it. Okay, feeling guilty. Okay, cool. That's okay. And then we go and look at all of the different expectations that we have put on ourselves that it seems like we're not matching in this particular case, right? So it's like, I should have gotten up earlier. So this conversation about should, really, conversation about guilt is the conversation about all of the shoulds that we have placed around ourselves in order to possibly create the life that our mind wants us to create, but it's kind of doing it in not the best way. So anytime that you feel guilty, recognize that there's some kind of a rule, expectation, or a should that you or somebody else is placing on you. And then we get to dive in and dissolve it in a way that, for example, in the morning, we spill a cup of coffee. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. And I'm starting with these simple things, right? Because when we can start to understand with little things that have little meaning to us, right? Spill a cup of coffee, there's nobody around us, there's nobody else to notice it, but we feel this internal sense, oh, why did I do that? Well, let's take a look. I shouldn't have spilled it, right? So that we had an expectation in our mind that our day is going to unfold in a certain way, that we're going to have a perfect cup of coffee without spilling. We won't need to spend the time to clean up. And it's a beautiful story for the mind that, yeah, our days could go in a perfect way, but in this case, they didn't, right? So in this case, especially looking backwards, in the past, I shouldn't have done it. It's a very interesting mental phenomenon that how can you say you shouldn't have done it if it already has happened? So in a way, yes, I had hopes and expectations and dreams that things would go according to plan, but this morning I spilled my coffee. I didn't actually spill my coffee. I'm just sharing this. This came up as an example. So it already happened. So if it happened, just because it already happened, that means it should have happened. Right? So here we actually get to play with the mind, how the mind really has nothing to say about what is real or should be real. And we simply rely on what is actually real. And the coffee got spilled, right? It happened. So rather than the mind trying to fight with reality, I shouldn't have. How could I have? I should have gotten up earlier. I was in a rush. And I was in a rush because somebody told me something. It was an email that I received. It was the pressure that I'm feeling. It's the kid that yelled or screamed. It's the partner that didn't let me sleep. Or I stayed up too late on the phone, and I began blaming myself and feeling guilty for staying up late that I know I shouldn't, right? So much beating up and so much expectations and so many rules that we place on ourselves. And oh my God, like I can so relate to that because believe me, I've been there. And the conversations that kind of, this is what's allowing me to have so much compassion for this healthy inner critic and the beating up that we do to ourselves. But just helping the mind understand things are happening the way they're happening because they should be happening this way, right? They wouldn't be happening any other way if they shouldn't have. So this is more coming back in relationship, in correct relationship with reality rather than fighting it, right? The world shouldn't be the way it is. The sun shouldn't be getting up late right now for us in the northern hemisphere. Like we get light after 7 a.m. It's like the sun is making me sleep in when I wanted to get up at 6, but it's still dark. The sun should be getting up earlier so that I can get up earlier, right? So it's either blame or guilt, and really guilt is blaming ourselves. So this fight with reality, things shouldn't be the way they are. And it's a beautiful thing. The mind just wants the better for us, right? But why are we fighting this reality? Things are the way they are. Who said they should be any different? The mind keeps saying that, and that's okay, right? So anytime you begin to notice the sense of guilt, notice the actual conversation that is creating the sense of guilt is that something should have happened a different way, or I should have acted in a different way. And then we get to dissolve it by looking. It's like, no, it's actually, not shouldn't, but it's actually, it should have happened the exact way that it happened. The relationship ended. It should have ended the way it ended because that's what happened. The accidents, the firings, anything that happens in life, like even the bigger things, right? The huge stuff that actually changes our experience of life. When we don't resist it and we just accept that, okay, this is happening, right? And because this is happening, it means it should have happened the exact way it happened. For you to be here in this moment right now, to be open to this conversation, to be hearing these words, that life should have happened the way it happened in the past. And it did so because of the innocent conditioning that you have received as the little body of a baby that didn't have any conscious control of the input of the information that you were receiving. It was simply being programmed by the society that we are in at the moment. Right? If we go as far back as, being born, again, I shouldn't have been born to the parents that I've been born into. Well, okay, it's a beautiful fight with the mind, with the reality. I should have been born in a wealthier family. I should have been born in a different country, right? All of this stuff that our beautiful minds sometimes love to reminisce or dream about. So the things, the way they happened, they should have happened the way they're happening, which means you being programmed from before we were able to speak any type of language means that your behavior right now is only happening because of all of the conditioning you have already received without your conscious knowledge or understanding. Let me say it again, that everything that you're doing right now is nothing but a result of past conditioning. And that conditioning had nothing to do with you. Right? So right now we're dissolving any sense of feeling guilty, of having responsibility for behaving or misbehaving the way that your mind has expected you to be, or other people are expecting you to be different. But how can they expect you to be different when you're simply the sum of all of the experiences you have had so far? which means the way you are operating right now, the way you're saying things, not saying things, the way you're connecting with people or actually disconnecting from people, it has nothing to do with you and has everything to do with your past conditioning that was none of your fault, which means it was none of your responsibility. Looking backwards. So at any time that you think your life is going in the wrong way and feeling the sense of guilt of, oh, like life should be different, I should be different. Well, how can you be different when this is the way you are right now based on your past experiences so far? Right now, we're dissolving this, any pressure from the mind to say that things should be different. So hopefully this is landing, and this is kind of, even your nervous system is absorbing this, that the way you are right now has nothing to do with you. It was everything to do with the way your past conditioning that was happening in an unconscious way. And with this conversation right now, as you're becoming more aware, more conscious about the way you have been conditioned and programmed, the way you are operating based on those conditionings, that there's just more sense of acceptance and, in a way, curiosity and wonder opening up rather than judgment and suppression. Wow, I am the way I am because of my past. No freaking wonder. Of course, you take any person and you give them the exact millions of experiences that you have already had in your life, chances are they will be acting in the exact same way you're acting or not acting. Perfectionism, burnout, lethargy, boredom, not wanting to do anything, procrastination, all of this stuff has everything to do with how you have been conditioned and programmed so far. And so this sense of guilt, this sense of responsibility for being the way you are, simply has no place in it because it was none of your doing. It was just happening for you. I'm hoping this is helping dissolve this sense of guilt so far. So at any time in the future that you will notice, I am beating myself up right now. My inner critic is saying I should be operating in a different way. Hopefully you'll remember these words, that this is just your past conditioning so far, and it's okay. Right? Change happens slowly. Change is possible, but for now, you're simply being the way that you're being because of the way you've been brought up and your life experiences that you've had so far. Cool. So these expectations, similarly, that our mind puts on ourselves, I should be earning X amount per year. I should have an X type relationship. I should have an X type of environment, location I should be living in. My schedule should be this way. My relationship with my prospects and clients, with my business, et cetera, should be this way, right? So all of these expectations, even the expectations themselves, are nothing more than the sum of all of the conditionings we received in the past. Things that made us feel good, things that didn't make us feel good. So the role of the expectations is nothing but to keep us operating according to the way we have been programmed and conditioned in a way. So how do we begin to shift this? Well, just the fact of listening to this conversation, I'm 100% certain that even if consciously this is not landing yet, your subconscious, your nervous system is already beginning to feel a little more relief that, oh my gosh, everything I've done so far had nothing to do with me. And the sense of guilt is just dissolving, I'm hoping. If not, please reach out. So where do we take it from here? Well, now, the only thing we can do now is to continue now to consciously create new events and opportunities for a new conditioning to enter this mind and body. Just the fact of you listening to this conversation right now is already creating a new conditioning in you. It is inputting new data, new information. It is already programming your system to, one, recognize when you're feeling guilty, recognize why you're feeling guilty, what to do with it, to allow and accept it rather than to reject it and feeling guilty about feeling guilty, to understand that this is happening because that's the way life has made you so far. And so right now, you're already receiving this new input, new information that is beginning to change the programming that you have received, which means you are beginning to be a different human, to be a different person who's going to begin to operate in a different way. And so rather than continuing to beat yourself up for, oh, I should have been a different way, and in a way, resisting any new information and data to come into your system to create change, to make change possible, rather than resisting how you're behaving right now, we shift the sense of guilt of making it wrong and saying that we should have been a different way. Now we shift the sense of guilt into a sense of curiosity, openness, and exploration and discovery. Is like, wow, okay, interesting. At that point, especially with this Christmas coming up, I behaved with my family member who I don't like in this way. Interesting. Why did I do that? We just opened the door for new information, for new conditioning to enter our system. Why did I behave that way? Oh my gosh, of course I behaved that way because I'm feeling frustrated, or feeling hurt from 20 years ago that they did something to me, or the way they said, or the way they didn't accept me when I was a teenager. But now, 20 years later, I'm still operating that way. Oh my gosh, of course that makes sense. Right? So the sense of guilt that I did something wrong and things I should have behaved in a different way has now shifted from, of course I should have been operating this way because this is the condition that I received. And now looking at it, not something wrong, but like, wow, why am I actually doing this? We get to the point of complete, total acceptance of our behaviors and the way life is happening to us and what is. We are now opening ourselves up to new information coming into our system. Oh my God, I couldn't express myself in that public speech because like my body froze, my nervous system couldn't function that way. And I feel guilty about it. It's like I should be a better public speaker. Well, of course you can be, because you've never been trained to be a public speaker. You've never been made comfortable to speak in front of people. This fear of rejection has been in your way. And now it's like, wow, okay, interesting. I was actually very nervous to speak in public. Okay, new piece of information. Now there's nothing wrong about it. Of course, it makes sense with you've never been trained for public speaking. Of course, your nervous system is going to be reacting this way because it's trying to protect you. And so now we're open for new types of experiences. It's like, interesting. I am nervous in front of public speaking, or I overreact when my partner says something that triggers me, or I don't like when I spill coffee and things don't go according to plan, because I love to be in control of my day or my life. That's when I feel the most sense of security and comfort. Just saying that feels much better. Like the sense of guilt is like, there's nothing guilty in being the way we are, because it's how life made us be. I am drinking because freaking life is hard, right? And because there's so much pressure, I need some kind of relief. And nobody taught me how to be with my emotions and how to process my feelings and how I feel about all of this pressure. Of course, I would be drinking. Of course, I would be addicted to overworking and all kinds of other vices that may be coming up. And all of that guilt that we have about the things, the mistakes that we have made. Oof. They should have happened, because now you wouldn't have been the person you are today if those things didn't happen. And so going forward, as you begin to dissolve this sense of I need to be different and start looking, it's like, wow, why am I this way? You're creating new programming, new conditioning, and this is how you actually create change. So every time you behave, you look backwards. Why am I behaving this way? And as you're discovering why you're behaving this way, you're creating new choice possible. I haven't been working out because, I haven't been eating properly because. Interesting. How do I want to be going forward? Well, I want to eat and work out and exercise and have more energy. Okay. Next morning you get up, you don't have the energy, you don't eat properly. Interesting. Why am I still doing it this way? Well, because there's more additional pressure. There's more emotional stuff that I'm not feeling good. Okay. There's nothing bad about it. Makes sense. The change will take time. But the more you begin to accept, it's like, okay, I'm 3 weeks in to trying to change my behavior and I still haven't done it. Not that there's something wrong and I can't make change happen, but I wonder why I can't change yet. I wonder what else is here. I wonder what new programming and conditioning I need to discover about myself to make this conscious change possible. And all of the expectations that we put on ourselves are just nothing but our mind's ability to want to have a better experience of life. And so as these expectations dissolve as well, it's like, wow, I get to be who I am today. And I get to create my future from this point forward. If I want to be at peace, I can be at peace. And if I'm not at peace just yet, then there's nothing wrong with me and just the way I've been conditioned. And so let's create new conditioning so that you can be at peace and discover all of these programs that keeping the peace away, because deep down inside, we're all peace, love, comfort. And I'm hoping this conversation is landing with you, that there's more relief about feeling the sense of guilt and the sense of expectation. Why do I feel like I need to perform more? Why do I feel like I'm not being enough right now? There's nothing wrong with that. We do that because of our life experiences so far. And so the way we get to change that in the future is to notice how we are today, begin to inquire into it, and then doing so, just by listening to this, you just have created a new conditioning, new program in your system that will begin creating new behaviors for yourself, creating new reality, creating new experiences, if nothing more, but a little more love and acceptance of the way you are today. And you're already on the perfect path to making the change and the shift possible, both out of guilt and out of expectations, and into wonder, curiosity, exploration, love, and experiences and creation. So good. I am so honored to have this conversation with you. Thank you for listening. And we'll talk soon. Have an amazing day.